and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very well and things are going good for you. Today we have got a really important episode, and I hope there are lots of competent business owners listening, because this is not meant to shame you or frustrate you, but it's maybe more for you to have a giggle and to say, yes, that is me. And then also hopefully be able to be self-aware and kind of move forward with them and think about different ways that you can not do these mistakes and habits that you might do. So today we are looking at mistakes and bad habits or unhelpful habits that competent business owners do. And these are just trends and things that I observe and I have seen that people have verbally said to me, like, I'm a very competent business owner, but I struggle with this, or I know that I do this. And some of these are things that people don't identify in themselves, but are things that people will ask me to identify, and these will be some things that come out. There are 10 items to talk through, and as I say, I hope you get curious with these. I hope you think, are these me, are they not? You might not resonate with any of them, and you might think, actually, I don't do any of these, which is great if you don't. But I would say a lot of people end up with all of these or some of these, and it might be nice for you to reflect on. So we'll dive straight in. Number one, this is hard, right? Because this first one is a bit controversial, because some people love sort of sharing this as like a thing that people should do. But in my opinion, people who ask for content ideas from their audience, or like how you can help them, is a bad habit that competent business owners get into. And it's just a lazy habit that people get into. Now, market research is fine. Doing this every now and again, I think, is fine. But what I don't think helps people is when they do this every week, or they do it really frequently, or they're constantly kind of putting onto their audience to give them content ideas or to ask for things that they want to, discuss. And what I think is also difficult about talking about this is there's definite ways of doing this where it's 100% great and you should do it. And then there's definitely ways of doing it where it comes off badly. So this is where loads of people don't say what they want to say on a podcast, because you're going to sort of offend someone and going to be frustrated. But I think it's just how you do it. So, for example, some of you will sit there and think, well, you ask people what podcast topics they want. I think that's a really decent thing to ask. Like, ask the people who are intrigued and consume your content, like, what would they like an episode about? Fine. Where I think it veers into not being that helpful is sometimes people will do this on like loads of different things in their business, and are just constantly, it almost feels like to the audience watching that they are constantly having to feed them stuff, feed the creator things to talk about. And to me, that doesn't make sense, because if you have a clear business strategy and you have a clear understanding of what you're doing and what your aim is as a business, what your mission is and what you're trying to sell, there shouldn't be that many gaps for you to plug into of empty spaces, because all of that I've just mentioned, the vision, mission, what you want to sell, what you're trying to do, should be covered, and you should understand like that. There's not gaps of like, well, what are we going to talk about? Because it will be very clear of what is going to be spoken about. And I think it's really important. For me, it really highlights to people when people do this of like, yes, you've got a really good business, and yes, things look really good, but actually the core basis of understanding what the vision and the mission is and understanding where they're going, I often look and think that feels very rocky and not as refined as it could be because of how they're going about that. I've really picked a bad one to go off. Like, for the first one, some people are going to have switched off. They're going to be like, and really disagree with me on this. But I think it's just really important to be mindful of how are you asking for input? And is it in a way that you're actually going to use it, or are you just burning out your audience by constantly asking them? It's kind of like when people come to me and say they're worried about being too salesy. I want to say to them, like, don't worry about being too salesy. Be worried that you're annoying your audience, not via sales content, by like pushing responsibility on them for content that they shouldn't have to be telling you for. That's what you need to be worried about. But nobody wants to hear that. Everyone is very comfortable asking people to do the kind of hard work for them and to give them content ideas. And then they're worried about being too salesy. The salesy thing doesn't need to be a worry. What needs to be a worry is like, how are you just like really lethargic and are kind of boring out your audience to death? So that's number one. They're not all as controversial as that one. Number 2, this one again, I suppose probably is controversial. Constantly wanting feedback. This is something that competent business owners can get into the habit of needing, and it's a real difficulty. Like, you really don't want to get into this conundrum. So what happens is, some people who are really good and really fantastic at business then want loads of feedback, and what they actually need is therapy. So people actually need to go to therapy instead of constantly seeking external validation, and they need to work on themselves. They're often kind of massively lacking self-leadership, emotional intelligence, understanding who they are, what they do, why they do it. Like, and I'm not talking about a business sense, I mean it in terms of them as a person. So their business can be really great, but then them personally, you can just see, and I suppose as someone, if you work with people a lot, that's how you see it. And if you have a high emotional intelligence, it comes out of where you see people and you're thinking, hang on a minute, you need to go to therapy, or you need to go and look at more inward. It's not necessarily about an outward business related thing. And again, I'm saying that with love. I'm saying that if you're identifying with that, please, please, please don't feel offended. Don't feel like you're a bad person. You're not. So many people go through this. But just start thinking about, where does this stop and end with business? And where is this more about a personal mission and what I personally need to look at? And I sometimes find that people who are constantly needing feedback and they're actually searching for constant external validation, there's usually something else going on that they need to kind of look at. And that something else going on doesn't have to be a present occurring thing going on. It could be something that's happened previously and however many years gone by. Number 3, allowing old beliefs to stop new opportunities happening is another really big thing. So people will come to me and will deliver sentences as though they're fact, but actually it's their belief that's causing them to feel like it's a fact. So someone will say, well, we will not do X, Y, and Z in the business because the X, Y, and Z will be the outcome. And they believe that because it's their belief, and they've had that belief for however long. Therefore, to them, it is real. And what I sometimes have to come in and try and untangle is what is fact and what is a belief. And if it's an old belief, what they sometimes have to go on a journey of realizing is that new opportunities require a new way of looking at something, but often they're holding on to an old belief. And that's good because it's probably made you successful in business, right? So the fact that you can retain learnings and knowledge is what's gotten you to be successful. The flip side of that is that sometimes it kicks back at you and actually prevents you from accessing these new opportunities because you're still stuck on an old belief that actually now is kind of disproven. Number 4 is similar to number 2 in terms of the feedback question, but this is something that I see happen, especially with people who, if you've kind of made decent money, or your business is at a kind of growth point where it's like circling through things and you're kind of moving through one period to get to another landmark or achievement or section. And what the point is what happens is they constantly want to hear from like new opinions. They want to access new circles of people. They want to uncover new networks. They want to find new groups. Okay. Now, there is nothing wrong with that as a statement. Of course there is not. Okay. You need to expand your network. You need to get into different rooms. Like, that is all great. What I do find though is some people will have this in their head and they're fixated on it. They're like, I've got to find new people. I've got to find new circles. I've got to find new networks. And they get really quite obsessed with it. And it's like, and they feel like, now there's a number of different reasons as to why they feel like that, right? And they depend on the person. Some people, it's that they feel like it's going to help them get more leads. Some people, it's an internal thing to do with their personality. Some people, it is to do with the belief that they don't know enough people and therefore they kind of want to escape from the people that they do know. And that's a whole thing. There's sort of 4 or 5 other different reasons as to why people get to that point. But what I want you to think about is, if you are someone who's constantly seeking out new groups, new networks, new experiences, why is that? Is that a genuine business strategy? Great if it is. So if you are someone who's thinking, I need to because I need to look for different, I want to sell to a different group of people and I don't currently know those people, great. But also be aware of is it a kind of way for you to just run away from a group, find another group, and then perpetually provide the same behavior, which is what often happens. So some entrepreneurs will go through this thing where they spend a year with one group, and then they'll move to like another thing, and then they'll spend 2 years and then move. And again, I'm not saying for some people that's great, that's what they need to do for their business strategy, but I have seen it where this provides a massive distraction rather than it provide an actual benefit to a business. Number 5 of mistakes and habits that competent business owners kind of do take on, create, develop. You will have on here struggling to commit to strategy. This is one of the biggest things we have. Struggling to commit to strategy and allowing trends to take over. This is something that happens with not competent business owners. This happens with young business owners. This happens with everybody. So this item would be on every single one of these different types of subsections of people. People struggle to commit to strategy for a long time at the intensity that they need to. People also get excited by trends and therefore then start something else. That is a problem. There is nothing wrong with a trend, and there's nothing wrong with you using a trend, but there is something wrong with it allowing you to completely derail your strategy and not committing to whatever strategy you've decided you're going to follow. The results that business owners get by derailing on their strategy is, they still get a result. That's how they've ended up competent in the first place. But the issue we've got is they therefore get 50% of the result they could have got, 20% of it, 80%. Like, they miss a whole chunk that they could have gotten from committing to carrying on with said strategy. And that is where we do have an issue, because they're just perpetuating the same behavior over and over again. And so I'm inviting you, if you relate to that, I'm just inviting you to think about, what could I put in place to stop that from happening? How can I make sure that, let's just do a test and an experiment to check that I can, for 6 months, follow a strategy that we have decided on and go with it. That's not me saying that you can't tweak something, okay? That's not me saying you've got to have a rigid plan. Struggling to commit to strategy and tweaking because you need to are two very different things. Tweaking is fine. Changing is fine if it's within the constraints of what you're trying to do. What I'm talking about that isn't okay is just randomly whacking something in and like, I'm going to do this because I fancy it, or this is happening and so I'm definitely going to do that, and like struggling to commit to the strategy that they initially set out to do. Number 6. This is another one, we've kind of just touched on it, that's a real thing that many people struggle with. I would say pretty much all business owners do, because unless you have gone and seeked investment and you have had to provide such a clear plan of what the intention is that you're going to do, most people will get to this point. And that point is that you don't scale your business, but you're still a really competent business owner, but instead you are just constantly adding new things or tweaking, but not at the right time. So again, what do I mean by that? What I mean is you have a goal to grow or scale, and you know that maybe you should really focus on one thing and actually just scale that and then add something else into it. But what you do is instead you just add new stuff at random times, or you tweak things, but not at the time that you know would be the logical time to do that. And the reason that is an issue is because it affects the amount of money you make, it affects the sales you make, it affects the impact you make, it affects how many things you sell, and that becomes an issue. Because when you look at your, P&L at the end of the year, and you look at a year-on-year thing, you think, okay, well, we've done all we could have done there, and we've put loads of effort in, and yada, yada, and you're either really happy or you're not, or you might be like, yeah, it's fine, no bother. But what you aren't aware of is what the actual numbers could have been had you not wasted time and resource plugging through things that actually behaviorally you do this every single year. And for some of you, if you're really competent business owners and you're listening to this and you're thinking, actually, do you know what? This is kind of me, and it's feeling a bit like triggering because you're like, oh, I think this is me. Go through and look at month on month, what did you do the last 3 years? What projects were you working on in the business? What new things did you add? Are there any patterns? For some people, it's springtime. Springtime, they add loads of stuff. Or it's Black Friday, they then decide they're going to add something in November. But what is it? And when do you do this stuff? And then once you are self-aware of that, I then want you to think about, okay, well, how can we challenge ourselves to not maybe do that in the future? And think about, can we set a challenge where we know that actually typically we do normally add something into mix? How can we just double down and sell on what it is that we're really good at selling and what we know is actually the thing we should be scaling or selling or trying to grow? I think more people suffer from this than they will ever admit to. It is something that I would think everybody at some point really has to grapple with and has to pull themselves up on, because it's hard when you're in it to identify it. It's really difficult. I can do it with clients sometimes as being an external kind of body and a face of opinion or advisor to say, hang on a minute, why someone gets on a call and like we haven't seen each other for 2 weeks and they start talking about something they're doing. I'm like, hang on, why are we going down that route? What's going on here? And you can pick that up. And that's the joy of having, business coach and advisor and a consultant. You can have someone who can really hold a mirror and be like, that wasn't what we were going to do. But I'm suggesting and inviting you to try and look at this from a selfish perspective and think about, how does this affect you? What does your behavior contribute to that? Number 7, which kind of links to number 6, because number 7 is another mistake and habit people who are very competent at business do, is they avoid the projects that actually matter and would move the business really forward. Now, I think every single person can put their hand up and say 100% they've done this. I do it 100%. People avoid the stuff that really matters and that would move the business forward. And part of the reason they do that is because of number 6, is because instead of using the time that they would be spending working on the stuff that does matter, they instead spend it on creating new stuff or tweaking stuff at the time that it doesn't make sense to. So this avoiding the projects that really matter isn't a conscious thing. They're not saying, oh, I'm just not going to look at that project, or we're not going to deal with that. Instead, it's just this natural thing where time doesn't allow for it to happen, because what you've actually done is spent the time working on something that didn't need to be done. If you keep avoiding the projects that actually matter and that will move the business forward, you are really self-sabotaging yourself, and you need to start looking at it in that way. And I am definitely taking more responsibility for this. This year, definitely for the second half of last year, and I think will be a constant project for me to look at as time goes on, because it's something that's so instinctively like something that everybody does. But really understanding, like, why are you not doing the thing that you need to do? And we can say that in all areas of our life, right? But in business, really get clear on and identify right now while you're listening to this, what is that one project that this year has to be done? I've got one in my head right now that is like top of mind and is like, that has to be done this year. No ifs, no buts. What is that for you? I'm not suggesting you have 10 of them. You can potentially have kind of like 2 or 3 if you want to. But really think about, what are the projects that actually matter that you need to do this year? Number 8. Again, I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this, but this is a habit that is not helping you as a successful business owner, and that you need to kind of get a grip on as you move forward in your journey. So, how many of us get excited about new ideas and put loads of resource into them and do loads of things and waste a whole week or a whole month and then drop them hours, weeks, and months later? This is something so many, if you're listening, you're probably nodding your head. So you get an idea, you're really excited, you're like, yep, I'm going to do this. And then you either hyper focus on it for like days, hours, weeks, months, and then all of a sudden you go, not interested anymore, and move on to something else. That inherently is causing massive issues in your business, especially if you have a team, because often you're making the team go one way and then another way, and it's this way and it's backwards and it's forwards, and like everybody gets confused. People get bored, they get frustrated, they don't know whether they're coming or going. It is an absolute nightmare. And whilst I'm not saying to you that you have to sort that out and you can never do that, I don't think that's fair. I don't think, it's human nature for us to be curious and to us want to explore things. But you do have to get a grip on it, in the sense of you cannot just keep doing that months in, months out, years and years and years, because it is not helping your business, and it is slowing down your progress, and it massively is reducing the amount of revenue that you could be making, if that's something that matters to you. So really think about, where are you wasting energy on that? Where are you wasting resource? Where are you exerting yourself too much? And this is about us coming back to, go and listen to the episode. I think it's entitled, like, what to action and what to leave, like projects to look at and projects not to. There's lots of different things to look at with that. But it's like, what do you actually need to spend your time on? Because sometimes you are just draining yourself by constantly getting excited about ideas and then not finishing them. And again, it's this drain, right? It's important to remember, like, we don't all have unlimited energy. We drain ourselves from the energy by getting excited about something that ultimately is not aligned with where we're going, or could work, but actually would be better suited if you allocated that on your project deck to say, we're going to look at that in 6 months' time. We're going to look at that in 3 months' time, or we're going to look at that next year. It's not about saying you can't have new ideas and you can't have new exciting things. It's about understanding, where does that play a role in your business strategy? And if you are someone who wants to be strategic and you're ready to be more strategic and operate at a higher level, you have to get really clear on, are you going to start new things, or is this actually a time for you to say, I'm not going to keep just doing new things, new things, new things? What I also want to say to you is, I have had some beautiful, amazing results with clients on this point, but actually on all of the points that we've just described. If people are open and aware of what they're doing and they want to change, I can really help them to put things in place that they don't do these, right? And we have had some beautiful examples where people are like, I am not doing this anymore, or I've got to put a stop to that, or it served me for the first 5 years in business, but now I've matured and I'm getting to a point where actually, for the team or whoever is around me, I need to stop doing it. And if you are listening to this and you're aware of it, and these are like light bulbs where you're like, God, this is me. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to shame yourself. I want you to think, okay, how do I move forward with this? And you can move forward on your own. You might want to come and work with me, and you're like, do you know what, actually, I really need to find some solutions to this, or what do you recommend? Or you can, just be more hopeful and mindful in your everyday life. But understanding where you're sitting on some of these things that I'm talking about is the first step in helping you develop as a leader. This stuff is leadership, ultimately. The stuff that sits underneath this is around leadership, emotional intelligence, and understanding who you are and why you do it and how you spend your time. It's not about a technical business scenario or a strategy. It's ultimately around, how are you showing up in the world as a business leader? And that's the work I love doing with people, because you can create some amazing, amazing change. One of my clients last year, they knew the point 8 there about getting excited about new ideas and then dropping them months and weeks and hours later. That was something that she was struggling with year in, year out. She finally recognized and was like, this has to stop because it's not helping me. So last year, she really focused on simplicity and was like, I am not starting anything new. I'm not doing it. She was like, I have to not do this for at least a year for me to really get clear and understand on, like, what can you achieve if you just focus on achieving what you're setting out to do with your strategy. And she, I think, felt a lot of relief that at points through the year it was really hard, because her natural behavioral positioning was to, like, go something exciting, go something new, look at something else and get derailed. But she didn't. She kept coming back to this idea of, no, I know that I've committed to simplicity and to just stay in the focus and stay in the course and not adding loads of new stuff in and not constantly thinking about new ideas. And that is really, really a beautiful journey to go on. So maybe you want to adopt that and think about, how can you add that into your life and into your business. We have 2 more mistakes and habits that competent business owners do that I want to discuss with you today. And I think these 2 are some of the most important. They're all really important that we've discussed. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode today. So, number 9. Oh, this is such a big one. Sorry, I'm just preparing myself before I say this. So, something that competent business owners do is that they constantly look around for newness because, hang on, so because it matters, because they think that the answer they are looking for is with someone else instead of in themselves. So this is huge, okay? So what I mean by that is, they will go to lots of events, they will listen to lots of podcasts, they will be in lots of masterminds, they will spend lots of time listening to other business owners because they believe that they haven't yet found some sort of magical answer that they're looking for some kind of direction, purpose, solution. Like, it can be a whole host of different things that they're actually looking for. And they think that someone else is going to tell them that. They think they're going to find that through a light bulb. They think they're going to listen to something and be like, yep, that's it. Or they think they're going to be in a mastermind room and think, okay, yeah, I get that. When actually the answer, that the things that they're searching for, is within themselves. I'm not talking about like a specific strategy. I'm talking about like people will have these very sort of forceful ideas that they don't know something that they should know. And often I try and spend time with people to get them to think about how is that already inside themselves, because it is. A lot of the time, the stuff that people are searching for answers for from other people is the stuff that's already inside themselves. They just can't trust themselves. They can't access that. They can't actually unlock the wisdom that's in themselves because they're so busy listening to everyone else, being quite nosy as to what everyone else is doing, and constantly comparing, like, well, they do that and I do this, so should I change or should I not? And it's this comparisonitis that turns into a real toxic existence for people. It's very draining. They can spend a lot of time consuming other people's things. Now, if that is you, that is not necessarily an overnight fix. For some people it is. For some people it's like, right, let's go inward. But for some people it's a learned behaviour that they've done for years and years, and therefore that's really challenging for them to just automatically change. But if you can even just be aware that you do that, you will be on the path to actually starting to change that. And I really hope that this episode can give you some time to reflect, think about, are you someone who is looking to others for the answer, the secret, the secret thing, the golden ticket, the thing that you're just not doing that everybody else is doing? Are you like trying loads of things and you feel like it doesn't work for you, but it works for everyone else? If that's the case, the answer, you're not going to find that answer from someone else. I would argue, like in 90% of cases. It's going to be in you somewhere, but you maybe not letting your kind of brain explore what it is that you need to explore. Number 10, and the final mistake or habit that competent business owners do, big one here, drum roll, drum roll, is getting complacent. So many people get into the habit of being complacent in their business, and it wrecks their bloody business, and they really impacts their bottom line and their profit margin and their team and their happiness and the value of their business. Like, getting complacent is an absolute killer of businesses. Across the board, across business functions, across industries, across sectors, but it also really impacts them if you are someone who is building a business to sell, which not all of you are. Some of you will, some of you won't. Regardless of whether you are or not, being complacent is a nightmare for your business. But where I really see some interesting things play out is when business owners are, eventually going to sell. It might not be the main purpose of their business, but at some point they are preparing, they would like to sell. They then get complacent. And inherently, it means the business sort of not spirals, because that sounds too dramatic. It can be a very kind of like slow trickling. It's more of a trickling than a spiraling, but the complacency really, really negatively impacts the business. It also happens when people don't sell their business at the point in which they should. And what I mean by that is there's no shoulds, they can do whatever they want. But sometimes people will hold on to their business for too long rather than letting go at the point they should have done. Then they get complacent, and then the kind of what they get out of their business inevitably is less than it could have been. Just don't get too bloody complacent, okay? Sometimes you're going to, it's human nature, but do not let complacency on a long-term basis ruin your business, because it really can. And if you let yourself get complacent in all aspects, right? Marketing is one that massively goes for most people. Getting complacent in your customer service, getting complacent in how you manage your team and your culture, like any place that you get complacent, often there's not a kickback straight away. Some people there is, but often it's this sort of 1 year or 2 year or 3 year effect that hits you, that you don't realize at the time is going to hit you. And that's what's really difficult, because people are like, well, if I knew that was going to happen, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have got complacent. But you don't know that until you've been there. And so sometimes that can be really frustrating. So please try not to get complacent. If you are someone who's struggling with complacency, you're kind of a bit bored in your business, or you're like, I know I'm being complacent, there are things that you can do and kind of steps you can put in place to mitigate that and to also protect the business so that you can still sit in your complacency kind of thing and for the business not to kind of be affected to the degree that it might be. Those are the mistakes and habits that competent business owners make and do and create and fulfill for themselves. I have probably missed some. Feel free to share any with me that you identify with or that came up for you while you were listening. Maybe there was some that cropped into your head. I just want to remind you, if you are a competent business owner, well done, congratulations. You've probably achieved some really cool, amazing things. You are fantastic. This is not meant to be really, I don't want this to be disruptive to you, but I do think it's a really nice point for you to think and reflect and to maybe look at, there's some more work to be done here, or I do want to get over these things, or understanding what impact these are having on your business. As ever, if you want to discuss working together to kind of untangle some of these or to create new patterns and new behaviors, you can go to my website, www.mayjames.com, and look at the offerings we have there, or you can drop me a DM on Instagram and we can chat through options there. You can submit an application to work with us. There's lots of different ways to contact me. But yeah, it's a good episode. It's an important episode. And I just want to remind you to be kind to yourself, because even if maybe you've resonated with all 10 of those, that's okay. Most people have a lot of these. Like, no business owner is like immune to making mistakes and to having bad habits. We all have numerous bad and unhelpful habits as business owners and entrepreneurs. Take care. Have a fantastic week. And I will see you next week for another episode of the Honest Business Podcast. Take care. Bye.